Montreal. It's nearly 2 o'clock. The Canadian Grand Prix is about to start. McLaren's second driver, American Michael Andretti, has everything to prove. With him on the grid is his race engineer, Steve Hallam.
See what they are just before the off. I may just bring the rears up a sniff. I don't want to catch you out there, that's the only thing. They're quite nicely balanced.
Michael was one of the stars of America's Indycar Championship when he joined McLaren at the start of the year. But his first season in Formula One has so far been an unhappy one. Out of 6 races, he has finished twice. Never a man to hide his concerns is McLaren boss, Ron Dennis.
Both he and I have one common feeling, which is that we're both disappointed. I mean, he's disappointed in his own performance, and of course I am too. As regards winning races, we're not doing the job that we need to do to provide him with the car and engine, and he's not doing the job he needs to do as a driver.
Team manager Dave Ryan is more optimistic.
Michael has got a lot of experience, he's a winner, but these cars are different. His approach has to be a little bit different. I think perhaps he's been a bit conservative up till now, and I'm sure we'll see an improvement.
McLaren's public relations chief, Norman Howell.
He's admitted he's found it tougher than he thought he might. It's not a 22-year-old youngster who's going to go all out all the time. You know, he wants to drive in a certain manner, and he's finding it tough.
Michael's wife, Sandra, is on the grid to boost his morale.
I think in the beginning it was quite an adjustment, but we're getting into a groove now, and I think he'll get the tiger eye back in his eye, because that's the way he used to run. And I think once I see that look on his face, then I'll know he's back into his race mode.
Racing runs in the Andretti family. Michael's home is in Nazareth, Pennsylvania, just a few minutes from his father, Mario, who has won 4 IndyCar championships and the Formula One World Championship. Michael's son, Marco, seems set to follow in the family tradition.
You guys going?
Yeah, we should get going.
Where are you gonna go?
Yeah?
Where are you going?
Swimming.
Swimming?
Racing has made Michael rich, and in America at least, famous. Now 32, he started his full-time racing at 18 and was soon on the podium. He won the American IndyCar Championship in 1991 and was runner-up 4 times. When he signed with McLaren, he had 27 victories under his belt. Before each race, he gets a call from Steve Hallam.
From that hairpin is all flat then, right?
Right, from the hairpin, yeah. It's all flat. Well, I'm always...
Hopefully it'll be all flat.
Right. It's all generally flat up until that right-left in front.
It is taking time for Michael to get used to Formula One.
Well, it's just unfortunate. You know, we've had a start where the races just haven't gone well, and most of the problems have come at the start of the races, and I think the races that I did have problems at starts, probably the ones where I was running the best, and probably would have been on definitely podium finishes at a few of them. So that's frustrating.
Michael arrives early at the Montreal circuit. In the 3 days ahead, there is the chance of much-needed practice. Though this season, the number of laps a driver is allowed during practice has been severely restricted. The Canadian Grand Prix is the only Formula One event in North America, and as the only American driver in the championship, Michael is carrying the hopes of the local fans.
I think you'll find that with this engine, the hairpins will be second gear. In fact, I'm sure
that's what it was last year, so
yeah.
it should be.
You can take first if you need it, and it's there if you want it, so... mixture. Up to now we've been running in P4, which is the nominal 100%, but at Imola 2 weeks ago, Mika did pick some speed up by going a little, no, by going richer.
We haven't tried that, have we?
No, and I want to try it here because here would be a place where we'd feel it. So not necessarily on your first run, but as we get into the morning, I'd like you to do a mixture span to see if you actually feel the difference.
We'll be talking to Steve Hallam, and we'll be discussing how we're going to break down each practice and what we want to try and things like that. And it's a lot more structured, I think, than it's ever been because of the way the rules are now. You're only allowed 23 laps of practice in the morning and 12 in qualifying, which again has been a little bit of a problem for me. But now you just have to structure and you have to maximize each and every lap. So we look into that very carefully together and how we're going to do it and what we're going to try and how many laps we're going to do in each run and what tires we're going to use and things like that. So a lot of thought will go into that.
He's coming in here. He's not standing much of short. He needs to be flat out of there, I'd say. That's right. If it's so bumpy through, you would be afraid to low drag, huh?
We've been helping him get used to Formula One, get used to the cars, get used to the way of working. There's a lot of technology on the cars, and you have to be, to get the best out of the package that's the driver and the car, Michael needs to understand it, and we've been helping him get to grips with what the car can do for him.
For Michael, it's been a big leap from Indycars to Formula One. His toughest challenge has been learning to handle these high-tech machines.
Big thing I had to get used to is braking. For instance, you come into a corner, an Indy car will basically have about the same terminal speed as a Formula One car on the same straightaway. But then it all changes when you come up to a corner because you're carrying a lot more weight on the Indy car, so you'll be braking. Say, for instance, you'll be braking at a 200-yard marker. With a Formula One car, you're going to go to a 100 or a 75-yard marker. So you almost cut the braking distance in half. So after 10 years of seeing things come at you at a certain pace and then braking in a certain place, now I have to tell my brain and reprogram it to say, hey, you got to go twice as far as you've done in the last 10 years. And that's another thing that's been tough to get used to.
Car jumps all over the place under braking. Because I feel like I'm braking so early until I try it.
Yeah.
I try to carry speed, the car just slides, and then it screws up that apex, you know.
Okay. You still have understeer in the... Oh, did we hurt your understeer with taking the front wing out?
No, it just made it less nervous, you know.
We went enough, did we?
Still can't do that one corner flat, but there's a bump there.
Is that it's more because of the bump than the balance, is it?
Now.
Yeah.
Before it was...
It was balance, yeah.
It was awful over these bumps.
Being on the McLaren team imposes another pressure on Michael. They're used to winning. Whatever the problems he faces, Michael knows what's expected.
Sounds like we've got, initially, sounds like we've got too much front balance aerodynamically. I think we ought to take some front wing out of it, and that'll help you loose, particularly there. The question is how much to take out. I have a feeling that we're talking about a hole. That's one hole both sides. Have a look at some data. We have time at the moment, and see if we can help you there. But the primary change is going to be front wing. Okay, good.
McLaren's technology is among the most advanced in Formula One. The team can minutely adjust their cars to suit each circuit. They can do changes to the wing and dramatically improve the car's aerodynamics. They can precisely program the onboard computer and control the car's ground clearance on each bend. So Steve is constantly pressing Michael for more information about how the car is behaving.
What did you think to the tyres? Were they staying with you? I reckon we leave these tyres on. I don't know how you feel. My fear is if I put you a new set and you do 10 laps, which is what we've got now, if we go for the twos, we'll need to race on the qualifying sets. We'll stay on these. Right. And is it set up exactly with the program that we have?
Same program, I just refreshed it. So.
Michael goes out for a few more laps. Driver and engineer can talk to each other on the radio. It's not easy at 150 miles an hour, but it has its uses. Like this, when Michael has a problem with the car's bodywork.
Coming off the front. So please repeat. My bodywork is coming off the front. You know, my front bodywork. Get you straight back out. Good. 1 second. Okay. Start it up.
Problems with the car mean that after the first day's qualifying session, Michael is lying 13th.
We get 35 laps a day. You get 23 laps in free practice and then 12 laps in qualifying. And you've got to go out and do it. You know, if you haven't got things right, if you haven't quite got to grips with the circuit, that doesn't matter. You know, you're on the same footing as everyone else. You've just got to go out and do it. And I think for Michael, that's hurting him.
After every practice session, the drivers and their engineers meet to discuss what's right and wrong with the cars.
It's truly amazing what happens in debriefing, because the days of saying, you know, the car's doing this in one corner, I did this in one corner, and knowing that it didn't happen, they know everything. It's like big brothers watching you the whole time, and so you have to really think things out. And I think the way I try to do it and the way most guys do is you try to use that information for yourself. You try to go through everything so you know exactly what the car is doing. You know, a lot of times you think you're losing time in one spot, but you're really not. And it's really nice having all that information at hand, but it does take a lot more time than normal because there's so much data to go through.
A racing driver's job goes beyond the circuit. He needs to do a bit of glad handing for the sponsors. At Montreal, that chore falls to Michael. Another pressure on McLaren's rookie.
How to run today? Stranger! Good to see you. Looking well.
Did you get all the stuff on everything? You do a good job?
I ship I sent everything up there? Everything, yeah. Beautiful, very nice.
When did you send it up there?
Just 10 minutes ago.
Oh, okay.
How you doing?
Saturday morning. Steve is not happy with yesterday's performance.
We weren't quick enough. It's as simple as that. Mechanically, we made some adjustments to the car. But the majority of the work was programming or software work that we were doing last night to try and, well, more than fine-tune the car. We're sufficiently slow to be making some fairly substantial changes. Ideally, we need to find a couple of seconds and more. Time will tell, and it won't be very long before we find out. I reckon we could go, Davey. What do you reckon?
It's time to try out the car again and see if last night's adjustments have worked. Michael's car is still causing problems. The right rear brake seems to be locking up when he enters a corner. He doesn't know why.
The screw, when they're braking into the hairpin, the thing went like that, and I almost went straight off. It was strange.
Well, let's just try and find out what's gone wrong. Do you lock the rears? Because I think we might have a flat spot on the right rear.
If you like it just across there, just if you run your hand just across there, you can, there's a definite flat spot.
They're not serious flat spots, there's a couple of them round it.
Yeah, there's something weird though. There's a reason why it did it, you know?
We're having a look now. For that reason, I'm just keeping you as you are until we've identified what's going on.
Now the action moves to the technology located at the back of the pit. Every detail of the car's performance is logged by the computer. Somewhere in this mass of messages, there could be a clue to the problem. The engineers have just got to find it.
If I stick to the 7.7, I end up with a single time lap, and this is a check lap to see.
The problem is if we find something and change it and go in the field at the same time,
yeah.
What's that going to do?
The engineers discover the rear suspension isn't balanced properly, causing Michael's brakes to lock up. It could be a sensor on the blink, so they decide to change it.
It's a precaution, I can be able to change it.
Okay, so we think if we change it, it's recovered anyway, we've isolated the problem, it'll be okay.
Yeah, but just be careful, just to check whether the connector is loose when you...
Okay, so I think we should drain the fuel as well, Steve.
Drain the fuel with the rear.
Check the connector.
We
think we understand what's going on. It's a problem with the rear left stroke sensor. We're just getting into it now. It takes us a while to change it, so we're taking the fuel out and going on to the right tank. Just bear with us, Michael.
Are you changing the stroke sensor on software, or are we changing it?
No, we'll... I just... Give me a minute to sort out exactly how we do this.
Oh, right. Do we have to calibrate it again?
We just enter the calibration into the system monitor. It's fairly
You don't have to have it sat on the ground?
That's what I'm just going to sort out. We're done. We can go.
Problem solved. Michael tries again. The lunch break before final qualifying. Hospitality is all part of the Grand Prix scene, with sponsors and special guests to be wined and dined. But it's strict rations for the drivers, prepared by a professional dietitian.
I'm preparing a vegetable soup today with a kind of grain corn. We call it grain corn in Austria. It's a kind of spelt wheat. And the reason is because it's very warm today, and therefore it's quite important to get a lot of liquid and electrolytes in the body. And with the soup, it's a perfect meal, I would say.
Saturday afternoon, the second qualifying session, and Michael's last chance to improve his lap time. Unless he goes much faster, he's going to be stuck at 13th on the grid, not a position McLaren is used to. "11 laps later, and Michael has improved yesterday's time. He's 12th, but still almost halfway down the grid. Formula One is proving a very frustrating business for the former American champion.
We've just finished final qualifying with Michael, and we're 12th place. We improved the car this morning. Unfortunately, we didn't reproduce our morning time this afternoon. I think the rapid rise in temperature this afternoon or in between sessions contributed to that. We are half a second quicker than we were yesterday, but it's not really quick enough. Touch disappointed all round, really.
It's time for some tactical advice from team boss Ron Dennis.
I actually believe that if you've got fuel, the best way to race here is to race. What I mean by that is to take advantage of someone screwing up at the end of the race. You've got to be as keep going going all the time. I'm telling you, go for it. And now from now on, you just race the way you want to race, and we'll just live with the consequences. If you fall off, you fall off. I think a relationship with Michael is relatively simple compared to the relationship that one has with someone like Ayrton, or in the past Alan Prost or Niki Lauda. In those instances, of course, you're dealing with drivers who have achieved their goals, the goals that we set for ourselves. They've won Grand Prix, they've won World Championships. What develops then in those individuals is an extremely strong and difficult to cope with character. And with someone like Michael, for example, he's yet to prove, and therefore it's much easier to handle, because you're obviously the boss, you've got the power, and you can administer that in many ways.
Sunday, race day. Michael's wife Sandra is optimistic.
I think he's feeling very well. He's really pumped up here. It's nice to be close to home. I've never seen so many signs in the crowd for Michael, and it's a good feeling. It gives us a good feeling to have that much support.
Feel okay. I mean, we probably, it's the worst we've qualified, but yet in another way it's the best we've qualified, and because I'm closer to Senna than I've ever been, and the car feels actually pretty good. It's just right now we're just hurting a little bit in the horsepower department, but it's a long race, and I think if we can be there in the end, we can make the points.
It's nearly 2 o'clock. In a few minutes, the Canadian Grand Prix will begin. These are the moments of maximum pressure for Michael. So far this season, his starts have often caused problems. If he can survive the first few laps, he has a chance of getting into the points.
S'il vous plaît, libérez la grille. Please clear the grid.
What Michael doesn't know, nor his engineers or mechanics, is that there is something wrong with the car's electrics. It may be a power failure or a faulty engine control unit. Either way, it's a disaster for Michael.
1 minute.
As all the other cars move off on the warm-up lap, Michael's car coughs briefly into life and then stops.
Started the car up on the grid. The engine fired. At the same time, everyone else is starting their own cars. We didn't hear it had stalled or cut out. And what had happened, there'd been a power failure, and Michael's radio, which is supported by the same power system, had failed. And so, until we spotted him sort of gesticulating and what have you, we didn't realize we were in trouble. As soon as we looked at the dash, we semi-understood the problem. We checked the jump battery connections and tried again. And we also tried to crank the car in case we'd just lost the dashboard. We were really grasping at straws then. And it was then time to move the car off the grid to the end of the pit lane because the other cars were coming round and we were in the way. The car still would not start. And so we changed the engine control unit. And when we did that, the car started and we reassembled the car, and Michael was able to rejoin the race. Unfortunately, by then, he'd lost 2 laps. And we were making up the numbers from that point onwards.
Michael went on to finish the race, but wasn't in the points. Once again, the start spoiled his chances. On this occasion, it wasn't his fault. But in the competitive world of Formula One, results are what count. And team bosses are unforgiving people.
You have to assume, almost give him the benefit of the doubt, that he has the ability to win in Grand Prix racing. I think the big question mark is, you know, is he going to do it in a McLaren? Is he going to do it this year? And is he going to get there fast enough to satisfy the needs of the team and the people who invest in it?